Welcome to Humans. This is the earliest I have ever come on. I'm here with Sue Gordon. I'm so grateful to have her. She was one of the country's top career intelligence officials, the former principal deputy director of national intelligence, the former number 2 at the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. She spent 25 years inside the CIA. Part of that time was information and cyber operations. She's also just an incredibly kind person who I have covered in other capacities in the years before this very moment. We're sitting here right now before Sue goes and gets chemo. So our conversation is just going to go wherever it goes. But I want to start out by saying that Sue does have a podcast, which I encourage you to go to. It's called Understandable Insights, Information to Intelligence with Sue Gordon. So, Sue, here we are. Thank you so much for coming. How are you doing?
Good. I'm a huge fangirl, Sasha. I love what you've been doing. When did we meet? 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years ago,
Yeah.
covering a woman who, Virginia Hall. You were
Yeah.
trying to get her an award, and I don't know if you guys ever managed to make that
No.
happen.
We will though. We will though. Virginia Hall, who's probably our most noted female operations officer, served during the time of the OSS. Great story. There are lots of books about her. Read it. Um, and our idea was she deserved the Medal of Honor. She had received the number 2 level award, but before some of her true exploits were revealed, there's only one other woman that's received a Medal of Honor, and we thought that she was a good candidate. But it's a pretty big system with pretty big requirements. I think we were more likely to be successful in the last administration, so we'll save our powder a bit
Yeah.
for a day, but talk about someone who's worthy. And here's the deal, Sasha, you know this because you've met a lot and you've talked about a lot and you work with the Spy Museum. There are so many worthy people. When you talk about hidden figures, they're all over the place, and just having a chance to reveal them is something you and I both love to do.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sorry that this hasn't come to fruition. But speaking of new administrations, right now we are a few days away from the president meeting with Putin in Alaska. This is the first time that Putin comes to the United States. I mean, I don't even know when, but he met Biden in 2021. This is a big triumph for Putin to just be coming here. But we've also seen Trump sort of shift gears in the last few weeks. He had threatened sanctions. There's secondary tariffs on India. He has criticized Putin for his conduct in the war. What are you expecting us to see out of Friday's meeting?
I'm always glad that there are conversations going on to try and end um, the conflict in Ukraine. It is an illegitimate conflict, 100% perpetrated by Vladimir Putin's desire to somehow recreate the past and to continue his quest to undermine democracy. Um, but it's bad, right? There is nothing good about that conflict. I think about Zelensky, and I think about Zelensky in the Oval Office, where the president had the temerity to suggest to him that he didn't understand the loss of life. Can you imagine being President Zelensky and having to make the call of what was the best thing for his country? So I'm glad they're talking. I'm glad that the president, at least momentarily, over the past 2 weeks, has said some things about he's disappointed in Putin, but um, the words coming out that Wiskov has made an agreement, agreed to give up land, that Zelensky isn't going to be there, that he hasn't talked to the Europeans. I'm so concerned that it's theater. It's theater that gives Putin exactly what I want to think about it. And this is basically a war criminal who we are inviting onto sovereign U.S. territory for a one-on-one meeting with the President of the United States. I mean, I guess I want to be hopeful, but I think it's fraught. And I think it's in part fraught because one of the things that, in my experience, President Trump has never understood is that he's not gaming Putin. Putin is not his friend, and
Mhm.
Putin's interests are his own. Um, he has real problems that may cause him to give more than he would have, but that the president's view of his own self-importance and his, in my experience, lack of willingness to listen to people who have experience tell him how it's going to go. Well, I worry that he's going to get played again, that it's going to turn to another Helsinki or
Right, and in that
another.
moment, he sided with President Putin over the US intelligence community about the 2016 election when Putin denied that Russia interfered. Then he later walked it back, but I hear what you're saying on that.
But I mean, it would be great. I'd feel better if Zelensky were there. I'd feel better if the Europeans had been included. I would feel better if there had been meetings set up ahead of time in order for them to come up with a collective strategy. I'd feel better if I knew that the national security community was having regular meetings with the president to say, here's how it's likely to unfold, because it's not like we haven't seen these things before. Uh, but
Yeah.
still, I think it has to play out. And until it doesn't, we hope for a good outcome.
I do wonder about what the learning curve of Trump is on Putin. I mean, we can go back years. We can remember when President Bush said, I saw my soul in his eyes. Like Obama tried. There was that like reset button that Clinton pushed. I mean, every president has tried.
Right.
But how long is it going to take Trump to realize that this former KGB officer still does not have his best interest or the United States' best interest in mind at all?
So I think two things are true. One, I have never met anyone who was more sure that he was better at everything than anyone, mostly because it can't be true. Right? What this whole thing that he said, in every room you're in, you're not the smartest person. I mean, there's just no way. But President Trump is, to a ridiculous degree, sure that he is the smartest, best person. So that's number one. Two, um, his lack of respect for the craft and discipline of intelligence that could actually provide him some wisdom and insight on the human. Not only on the human, but we've been looking at Russia's intelligence and national security apparatus for a very long time. Um, we understand their motivations. We understand what they will and won't give away. And we understand what Putin's, and here's where I think the opening may be, where Putin's real circumstance is within his country. I wish he had the confidence in the national security apparatus and the wisdom and the expertise of the professional cadre to listen to that. My analog would be Kim Jong Il and North Korea. He was sure he could get that one done in a day too. And the experts were saying he can't give it up.
Hmm.
Right? You may think he will. You may think he offer riches, but here are all the reasons why he can't give up his nuclear weapons. So um, I think it's just a combination of who thinks he is, his lack of trust and understanding of what the expert class could bring to him. And I think probably the third thing is, um, you know this about Russia, Sasha, that they are a very robust, very integrated security service. They have command of all disciplines. In a weird sort of way, China's kind of new to the game, but in terms of having integrated operations, Russia is really, really good. You
Yeah,
think they don't know who he is,
right. Right. They've
right?
done their
And that
homework.
they've done their homework. And one of the things that I have never believed is that uh, President Trump was in a complicit relationship with Russia. Just I've never seen any evidence of that, nor um, did I believe it would be so. But that doesn't mean that they're not using him. I mean, one
Yeah.
of the things that every intelligence officer knows is that you can shape without control. And so I think his inability to consider the possibility that he is being manipulated is another weakness he has.
And because what that implies is that he's not the one holding the cards, which is what he
Right.
told Zelensky he had in the Oval Office back in February. And even in that moment, just to see how Zelensky was not, he clearly didn't get briefed in such a way that he knew how to speak to Trump.
Right.
And what I think is on Friday, we're going to see that Putin knows how to speak to Trump. And I think
Right.
Zelensky has also gotten better at understanding the key points, the key themes that he needs to use in order to stay in Trump's good graces. Well, I mean, we could stay there, but I also wanted to talk about China because this
Mm-hmm.
is a rare area of bipartisan support, that
Right.
this is
I love
the
it.
top threat. So it's
Right.
nice to be in a place of bipartisan
Right.
support and a conversation. And yet, I feel like we're barely talking about China right now, barely talking about it, which is just so weird as a person who covers national security. We've spent so much time on so many other areas. So, as we see the changes that the Trump administration has made, not just at the CIA and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, but also inside the FBI, also at Homeland Security, do you think that
Also at the State
at this,
Department,
oh my God, how could I forget the State Department? Yes, thank you.
you had a great talk on that.
Yes, I've been covering that, but it's 8:12 on Monday morning. Things haven't started for me really. I didn't have a cup
Exactly.
of coffee yet, Sue. But based on all of these different agencies seeing change, do you believe that this administration and these agencies are still prioritizing China when it comes to national security?
Oh, what a great question, and kind of funny how you asked it. It's made me think of a number of things. Now, number one, historically, China um, has historically almost always come in second. I mean, one of my greatest frustrations with the Trump administration is they're spending so much time chasing ghosts, that they're not taking this moment to address the really profound changes in the world. This really is a world of strategic uncertainty where we don't know what it's going to look like. And we can't keep drafting off the work of our predecessors. We actually have to create some new works. And so it perturbs me. Um,
Strategic uncertainty. That's interesting because, there was that policy strategic ambiguity, but interesting to hear
right.
you call it strategic
Yeah.
uncertainty. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm a Zoe major, so we talk about things in those terms when there's always a moment when you don't know what life is going to look like next. And we're in one of those moments and we're wasting time. So it's interesting. It perturbs me that we're not taking better use. Two, part of that drafting off the work of our predecessors, so much of our national security apparatus really is Cold War descendant. And I remember when I started at the CIA in the Office of Scientific and Weapons Research, there were about 800 people, and 799 of them were working on the Soviet Union, and one guy did China and the rest of the world. Fast forward to the first Trump administration, I actually think that one of his first administration successes was to really focus on China. And I think in part he did that because he was our first real president whose focus is on economic security rather than just political military. So I think they did make headway and we've made some inroads. But like with so many things, this is a real multidisciplinary focused effort in order for us to really be able to prepare ourselves against the China threat that now is volumetrically huge. It is technologically robust, particularly in the area of information warfare. It has announced that its intention is to win a competition with us so that their system dominates.
Yeah.
And we have Taiwan sitting out there that is being gaslit every single day with incursions over previously established norms. And seriously, do you want to talk about something that is the interest of the American people? It is China, because conflict with China, because we are intertwined economically, because it isn't nearly so clear to have the good guy and the bad way with our private sector and their interests, and just what would happen if there was conflict in Taiwan, we would see global economic impact that made the pandemic look like a speed bump. And so that we're not talking about these things and that we're not advancing and we're distracted by threats over tariffs, which is so much less of a consideration than how are we prepared on supply chain in terms of global competition, in terms of influence in the global south, in terms of China using digital means to shape us, whether that is investment dollars or actual information influence operations, is just a wasted opportunity. So it's vexing because we have everything aligned against it. But once again, it is too big a problem, it seems, to command the attention of this administration. But when you look at what's happening in China, man, she's on the ropes economically. He's on the ropes in some ways politically. And what we know happens is that when that happens, he needs to do something in order to recapture his population. So I don't think there's anything that's diminished about the threat. It grows every day. But it is bigger than whether we put 35%, 15%, or 75% on tariff on China. That's just a distraction. And to your question about has the erosion of expertise in all those agencies hurt? Yes, it hurts. Because the president is interesting, but he doesn't do the backbreaking physical labor of national security. And so if you don't have that there with diplomats working at their level, with strategists working at their level, with the intelligence community saying, now, how are we going to get the information we need on the patterns of life that are much more important than the capabilities? You just won't be prepared for the next thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just a few days ago, there was this opinion piece by Brett Goldstein over at Vanderbilt. It was about Golatzy, which is this Chinese tech company, and the borders between the private sector and the government are very fluid, but it is using AI. And according to Brett, literally documenting the preferences and the information on individuals here in the United States as well as in Taiwan, and using AI to tailor disinformation to people. It's not like the generic stuff that we've seen, which has already been confusing enough just to present on social media. Now this is more tailored.
Yeah.
So we're even in this new phase when it just comes to the information operations, that's not even taking into account the developments with the People's Liberation Army. And as you mentioned,
Right.
how Xi needs to have a win, and maybe that win becomes Taiwan in the years ahead, at least in an attempt to win it.
Yeah, Brett's article was fantastic. One, it was just so good, and two, so incredibly timely. So let's just go back and look at a couple things. Number one is the ICA in 2017 on Russian interference and Russian interest in influencing the election was fundamentally about influence operations.
And this is the intelligence community assessment of the 2016 election,
Right.
which came out, I guess, early 2017.
Yeah, it was in January. Anyway, what it said was, yeah, they didn't hack our election infrastructure, but they sure as shooting are intending to shape our elections through information operations, some of which was stealing data, whether from voter rolls in states or whether it was out of the DNC, and some of it was planting stories that people could use. And it was pretty, in a way, ham-handed comparatively. Now, fast forward now, put it in China. China's interests are not the same as Russia. China wants to undermine democracy. China wants to win and control how the economic system works. Moreover, they're invested in computing technology combined with their willingness to steal data. 2014 OPM hack was theirs. That was every person who had a security clearance. They collected that data. They collect data that's encrypted because they believe they're going to win quantum that day. And more importantly, they collect it on their citizens, so they're practicing with it every day. So absolutely shaping how people think through targeted messaging that is like 1 degree off from where they already are, but to get you to view it is everyday thing. So every day that we are afraid to tackle as a nation, as a free and open society, we are afraid to tackle information quality. And I'm not talking content control. I'm talking about how do you know that what you're getting is from a legitimate source? When we don't tackle information quality because we've made it somehow a political issue of righteous freedom of speech or lack of trust or all those things, we are doing exactly what our opponents hope we'll do, which is to create a landscape where they can undermine trust. And trust is necessary for free and open societies to work. I mean, this is Brett's article should be required reading for everybody. But it isn't new and is built on things we've been seeing. And it is frustrating because we come up with lots of reasons why we can't possibly tackle the issue of information quality in the way we need to.
Right. And I don't know if this is in Sun Tzu's Art of War, but this idea of it's better to fight a war when the other side doesn't know that you're fighting.
Right.
So
And because it's maybe hard for us to believe with some of the rhetoric that goes on now, we're people who default to trust. Right? When we get a piece of information, we want to believe it. When we go to the gas station, we believe that it's filled with, 93 octane gasoline. We don't think that someone's doing it. And so this is what's insidious about closed societies or dictatorial societies attacking open societies is they are attacking that which is fundamental to who we are. And so it makes it, to your point, hitting us from within. And the fact that we are more distrustful of our own government, more distrustful of anyone who thinks different from us, that has been engendered by our own government is just a playground for our adversaries and competitors in this space.
And I did want to ask you about that. We have seen recent declassifications from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, from the director Tulsi Gabbard herself, on the 2016 election. What are the ramifications of declassifying those documents in your eyes?
Well, again, it is so hard for me to get past wasting time on something that has been adjudicated. It's hard for me to get past the damage that's being done to the community itself and to the American people who are being told that their government is malfeasant. I've seen malfeasant governments. We may not be nearly good enough. We may make mistakes. But I'll put those aside and try and answer your question this once. I think there are two problems that I see with it. And again, she has the prerogative to do it. The one is, I think what's been reported is there are details in there that an intelligence officer can use to know more. And when an intelligence knows more, what they're doing is they're knowing more to be able to use it as a weapon. And so, man, you have to be really careful about what you decide to give them. I mean, I think this is what the average bear doesn't understand is protection of sources and methods is not about protecting from embarrassment, how we can embarrass ourselves with intelligence failures. It's about protecting the ability to, one, be able to do something again, and two, the real humans and the real techniques that have given us advantage in the past. So I hope that there was a great review and that somehow they decided that the details revealed there would not be advantageous, or it seemed detailed to me. But I think the second piece of it is that I worry about is, so we're throwing a lot of data out there and someone's going to reconstruct it to make it say what they want it to say. Right? We all know that, right? That's how bad things happen. Someone looks at a bunch of data and they say, oh, I think it says this, or I think it says that. There was a process that led to the ICA. It was validated. It was reviewed. It is not just the opinion, but actually the craft that led to that. Now you're putting all the sorts of data back, and you're going to let anyone just put it back together in a way that they think that makes sense to them.
Mm.
I, one, I, I don't, if you don't tell me who those people are and you don't tell me what standard they used, if you don't do an intelligence note that looks at the tradecraft review, I think, you know what the difference between intelligence and law enforcement is? Well, intelligence is an inductive science, and law enforcement is a deductive science. So in law enforcement, you have a thing happen and then you go try and prove how that happened, right? You're looking for the answer to that thing you already know. And I think one of the things that in law enforcement, they always worry about is overzealous law enforcement who decides they get wedded to their solution to that problem because they get rewarded every time they can prove that that thing happened that way. That's deduction. Intelligence is entirely different. It is an inductive science. That means that you look at what is and you try and understand. The minute you look at intelligence data, which is certainly uncertain, you run the risk of finding a pattern that doesn't exist or a conclusion that was in your head that you could assemble the pieces to. So the idea that we've now thrown data out, said that it proves things, and it's going to be Tucker Carlson or the Directors Initiative Group or somebody else that decides that it proves something. I think that is intellectually unsound. But more than that, this is 2016, an election that Donald Trump won that President Obama said he won. What are we doing?
It
What are we
also
doing?
it leads me to wonder what it's like for people on the inside right
Yeah.
now, and it brings up questions of how to protect analytic integrity. I mean, it to me is fascinating that we're seeing both the Trump supporters and Trump critics discuss how intelligence has been politicized, and they just point to different places. But how do you manage analytic integrity in an environment that seems like it is at least to some in question?
Yeah. So first, I would just talk about what people may or may not understand about the professional cadre. So I joined the CIA in 1980. I have worked for Carter, um, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Trump. Did I miss any in there? Which one of those was I trying to serve? All of them, by doing the craft of intelligence that has nothing to do with policy and just trying to give them decision advantage. So number one is every time somebody says that a career employee was a Biden appointee, yes, I was appointed by President Trump because my position at the end was a political appointment. I was, I was never, I lost my job halfway through because they said I was in the pocket of Brennan and Clapper, which anyone knows me, I wouldn't be in the pocket of anybody. But it isn't the discipline. That's number one. Two, look at what's going on. So I believe in the women and men who serve. I believe in the oath that they take. I've watched them for on 40 years, seen them trying their best, not perfectly, but trying their best to do their jobs. But now we're firing people indiscriminately. We're firing people who write an estimate that isn't convenient regarding Trinidad and Venezuela, and they lose their jobs. Over time, there is a deleterious effect, especially if you lose a lot of the wise heads who have seen this before, who've seen what happened when we bow to the pressure of what we know some political appointee wants us to be able to say. And that isn't even creepy. It's just human, and it still happens. But now they're walking around saying, man, I know what they want me to say. Once you know what you want your boss wants you to say in intelligence over time, and people are getting fired for loyalty tests, zero chance that it's going to have the same integrity, and zero chance that people of high integrity are going to be able to stay. And I'm not blaming anyone who stays. I'm just saying that this is fraught with peril. And again, the consequence is the decision makers won't get the value of seeing what is as clearly as it can be seen, and rather they will get support for what they want to do. And those two things are so fundamentally difficult and problematic that I can't even bear what the long-term consequence of continued action on this front will be.
Let's set the focus on next year with the midterms.
Mm-hmm.
We have now
Mm-hmm.
seen that the president has grown frustrated and blamed the intelligence community, both in 2016 when he won, in 2020 when he lost. Are you concerned about whether or not he will go after this intelligence community next year as we look at the changes in Texas whereby they're trying to rewrite the House map and the Democrats have left the state? These are aspects that President Trump has, discussed, has endorsed, has suggested. But when it comes to the intelligence side, if, for example, the House ended up becoming more democratic, would he go after the intelligence community, do you think?
Well, one, I think the president has made it clear that he's going after elections. What is insidious about it is he's stealing the moniker of election security and then taking actions that are, from my perspective, outside the scope of the federal government, because our elections are disproportionately state, and he's sending instructions of what he wants. And because we have lawmakers who have decided their interest is their party rather than their country, not standing in the way of a whole bunch of activities that seem fraud. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm looking at the state capitol right now. And I would say every American, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, should be horrified at the notion. And listen, I'm not a big gerrymandering fan anyway, and let's clean it all up, and let's after the next census decide that we're going to do better about this, and let's use AI to find patterns of what would be fair districts across the board. But today, this now last minute effort to make sure that the president of the United States gets the votes to be able to stack the decks he wants, every American should say, wait a minute. I know he's saying that's what it's about. What he's really saying is he does not actually care what my view is. What, for the first time, we have a president saying, you know what is more important to me, that I arrange so that I get the votes I want, than allowing every person who votes to vote the view that they have. This is really quite a big moment in terms of what's going on. And I think what's so disappointing is we really were on a track of, from 2016, where we realized that we had not been focusing enough on election security. What happened between 2016 and 2020 under Chris Krebs with the strengthening of CISA, the
And that's the
partnership between
DHS cybersecurity arm,
yeah,
and this comes in the wake of designating elections critical infrastructure.
right.
Continue.
Yeah, but what they did was they realized that those are not federal things. Those are how secure the state and local are. And so they really worked with them to give them the wisdom and insight and organization of federal, while allowing them to do the things they need to do in state and local. In 2020, um, happened. And I'm with Chris Krebs on this one. That was, from election security, our most secure election. Then we have 4 years of Jen Easterly, and Jen just advanced that, and what people can know about cybersecurity and election security, and how much stronger our state and local got because of that. And now we're in with no data to speak of, now going back and saying, I'm going to put my thumb on the scale. And more than that, I'm going to attack Chris Krebs and Jen Easterly and somehow convince America that they were not doing the interest and I've got to overcome them. This is worrisome. People ought to be watching.
Yeah.
People ought to be watching for whether the Constitution is being followed, whether your state and local is as strong as they need to be to not let things happen that are not in your interest. You know, the coolest thing about America, and it's why I'm always going to be optimistic, is the people actually still do have the power if they choose to exercise it.
Mhm.
Right. And that is, who do we send to represent us? Who do I put in my state houses? Who do I send up to Washington? And then how do I hold them accountable? Because if we do that, there's a path through this. And it doesn't mean that we can't like the policies of different politicians. We have different views, but putting the thumb on the scale to get an outcome without our process is not America.
And I've actually reported a few months ago on how some of the top election vendors are not sharing information with CISA, the cybersecurity arm of Homeland Security, because they are fearful that that information could then be used to undermine the election.
Right.
And so there are really some turns that we would never have known could happen in previous years. And yes, Chris Krebs, Jen Easterly have had seen their own obstacles based on what Trump has come out and said about them. Jen Easterly was supposed to teach at West Point. I think she was also a graduate of West Point, and that got
She was.
nixed. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess what I just want your listeners to know is, I mean, these people worked really hard, did really good, did itself. So again, there are always imperfections. There are always things we can learn, but really and truly, and if you take the story about what China's doing,
Mhm.
and if you take the understanding that Russia has not stopped being interested in influencing what's happening here, if we aren't strong, the combination of the desire of power to stay in power, coupled with the interests of our allies and competitors who would undermine us, we can actually create the environment for exactly what every single one of us would repudiate. So pay attention, people.
Sue, before we started this conversation, when we were in the room, you told me that you had thought you might run for president and then you were diagnosed with cancer. Can you tell me more about, I mean, both
So
sides
yeah,
of
so
that?
what I'll tell you is I when I was confirmed as President Trump's principal deputy director of national intelligence, I opened my confirmation hearing by saying, simply put, I love America. And I loved being part of the process that our founders envisioned. I'm worried about it. So, um, uh, I decided that I had to do something. And my thought is that the weirdest thing has happened in America where we have started believing about us or not believing in us in a way that does not comport with what I know of all the people I've met over the course of my life, whether that was being a Navy kid who traveled to every state in America, whether that was serving in the intelligence community, or whether that's just being a citizen who liked saying hi and meeting people along the road. So my idea was, we are not having conversations that are worthy of the American people. We are not. Our politicians are not. A pox on all their houses. I mean, there are good guys left and right, but I got to tell you, this is a real moment for us, and you need to have a conversation about the issues that the American people may have been cryptic about with their vote, but they have it. People are hurting. The government's not good enough. We have health disparities and education disparities. Let's take those on and have those conversations about what the issues are and give them solutions that are not choosing between two things, neither of which seem like their work. So my thought was, if you just had a humble Tim Bender come out there and say, here are the issues, let's have the conversation, 70% of America would say, well, I want that. And all of a sudden, instead of everyone being forced to choose between A or B, they would say, hey, let me understand what that is. And maybe I can accept that there's a different approach. So, I don't understand all my friends who are Republicans in the House and the Senate who are being entirely different from what I know them to be. But gang, we're in a fight for this amazing thing that we have. And so I was going to try and do my part, even though I'm totally not worthy. I couldn't imagine not doing my part. Now I've got a slightly different fight to fight on a front that's a little sporty. But so that's why I started the podcast I did, Sasha. It's trying to do what I was going to do, which is say, let's have a conversation in the context that matters to America. Because you and I love talking about the arcanity of national security. It's fun when we talk to each other, right? When the intelligence community writes its intelligence assessments, it writes it for a small group of people that all have security clearances. And what that has led is for our real national security decision makers, who are our companies and our people, think that all this quiet we have is a given. Think that if we get rid of mRNA research and denude universities of federal funding, that's okay, because that was always, rather than that being the stuff that let us succeed during the pandemic, even as much as we did. And so part of it is saying this thing that seems so distant to most Americans. How many people in the State Department understand China? Or what's the scientific foundation for our health and human services? All those things seemed like something that was just, I didn't have time for. Y'all, we need to have time for it now. And I think we need to start talking about it, not just within the government and not just in terms of who's harming whom, but the future that we want to have together. So again, Sasha, one of the reasons why I wanted to come and talk to you, because when I listen to your podcasts, you aren't choosing a side. I don't hear you choosing sides. I hear you trying to articulate things in a way that people can take what you offer and understand what it means. And I think that's just the moment we have. And so I hope that that's what they'll do, even though I'm just trying to live to fight another day.
Well, I hope you live to fight many, many more days, because you are an incredibly important part of our national dialogue. And I'm occasionally getting to glance down and see these comments, which somehow vanish after we are done. So I don't even know what people are saying sometimes, but I'm seeing people writing these comments about how grateful they are for what you're describing as curiosity and respect for institutions, and sending you healing thoughts and incredibly kind, supportive notes right now. And Sue, I mean, I I'm hoping that we can continue talking and staying in each other's lives. And this next question is really more focused on you looking back. Having spent so many years in the intelligence community, reaching the highest levels, you were ultimately faced with life and death matters. You saw these incredibly high stakes play out in real time. And as you mentioned, now you're fighting your own battle, a different battle that's also life and death. And I'm wondering, where you are in your own thoughts. Because if you had been able to run for president, we wouldn't be talking right now. You'd be very, very busy doing something else. You'd be blowing me off as I'd be texting you, "Hey, Sue, do you have a sec? Do you have a sec?" So I just wonder, how has this diagnosis changed your outlook on life, the way that you live your life, and
Wow, that's a big
maybe,
question.
yeah. And I'm sorry if
Uh,
you're hearing construction right now, just ignore it, but I can't control that. If we're hearing any crazy sounds.
I can't hear it. I can't hear it. Um, what a big question. Man, I've had the best life, right? So, God, I had a career I had no right to. I was inspired by it every day. Um, if you're listening to me talk, you, I hope you understand that it is unbelievable that I could have presided over an intelligence community that would be malfeasant, right? And I'm common in the intelligence community. So I guess I look back and I cannot believe the people I got to work with, or the patriots who sacrificed, or the people was thinking when Dan Bongino was saying, man, this is really hard. I have to get in at 7 and work until 6. And I'm like, yeah, you know what people in my line of work call that? They call that Sunday. Right? It's just so just I am awed by the dedication that I have seen, by the accomplishments that I have seen done in partnership with industry. I have been governed by being worthy of Mr. and Mrs. Iowa, whose taxpayers' dollars funded the things that I got to lead, and trying to make sure that every single day the decisions I made were worthy of them. I've seen patriots' families on the tarmac in Dover when they're bringing their loved one back for the last time. And I'm trying to comfort them and say something semi-meaningful. And halfway through the conversation, they comfort me because they want to assure me that their loved one was doing what they wanted. I've seen such grace in the name of keeping America safe that it is all that I've experienced that I know, even with all its imperfections. That to have this moment where we most need them, to somehow have it seem to be okay that we can push them aside or belittle them or degrade them, I think that puts whatever physical fight that I'm fighting, which, by the way, I'm Sue Gordon. Of course I'll win. But it does bring me back to wanting to do my teeny tiny part for the America that I've loved for all those years, because I think it's consequential. And what I know is it does matter what one person does. And like I said, it's about you. Sasha, what you ought to do today is you ought to go back and look at all the stories you've told and say, and all the comments that you've gotten, and say, man, I'm doing my part too. So that's just, I'm doing my part for the team, as I have done for my whole professional life. Just a little different today. And it brings me joy and gives me hope, because I see people doing amazing things all the time, even as we have someone trying to say that we aren't.
Can you tell me about a moment in your career that you believe was incredibly formative to you? I know that is having you go back in time and extract a memory of something specific that, was really a really big deal.
I can't
But
believe I'm crying. Well, every one of them. I think I think it's all the little things, Sasha. It's, Leon Panetta said this really well in his first letter back to the CIA workforce once he was director and had gone on a foreign trip. And he used to write a letter back on the plane. I think Bill Burns did that too during his tenure, and probably others did. But I remember Leon, and he said, oh my God, I've learned that the fiction I read of isn't nearly as beautiful as the truth I now know. And so from tiny moments where I was a junior officer who got to write what we called a snowflake for the president's daily briefing, while my friends who had just graduated from Duke were working for GM and designing a bushing.
yeah,
And I got to carry that weight um, to the end of my days when I was leading the intelligence community and convincing everyone that they should give up 2% of their budget so that we could actually make meaningful progress on AI, and everything in between, when I was fighting battles that I thought were important and giving in on battles that I thought were important but could only advance as I gave them up. I mean, it's every person I ran into the hallway, the people that were there on the weekends and on the holidays because they just believed. So I can think of moments, but I can more see faces. And again, I wish that's the one thing people know, is just that dedication. So Elon Musk is an amazing guy. Look, he lives in America. I love America. You can have a good idea and or build on that idea and make gazillions of dollars and do amazing things and be smart in doing it. if I list the top most impressive 1,000 people I know, you wouldn't even, I couldn't even see them close to that list. That's how amazing it is. So I think that's what I feel. I feel how broken we were on 9/11 because we all felt that we had failed at the one thing that we were supposed to do. Um, I remember being despondent uh, when I had misunderstood how you bring a program to fruition, and I thought it was all about the thing I built. Um, I remember starting InQtel and then hearing,
Which is really like the
uh,
financial arm for the intelligence community, the investment
well,
arm, I
it's
should
it's
say. Yeah.
cooler than that, Sasha. It was in 1998 we convinced a group of private citizens to form a nonprofit corporation where if we gave them money, they would invest in companies that were necessary for security but had not yet proven commercially successful. And every time I hear Pete Thiel, I think, yeah, 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 we gave you money. Right? So it's the breadth of it. It's probably the smaller moments. The
Mm.
day Sally Ride called me in my office because we were going to give a briefing to President Reagan on space. Just 1,000 little things, all beautiful and hard and brutal and wonderful. And America.
A lot of gratitude in that remark, and a lot of honesty in this conversation. Is there anything that you would do differently? Or here's and like, if you look back, was there anything that you wish that you had approached differently, or a moment where you would have wanted to slow down, or and if that's a no, then I got another question ready to go.
No, I'll try to answer it shorter. Man, I keep trying to hope I can answer questions in tweet, and I just suck at it. Okay, so here's the action that I took that I'm most proud of, uh, and was both easy and hard at the same time. Um, in 1999, it became obvious to me that I could no longer be as good a parent as I needed to be, and as good a intelligence officer as I needed to be. And I'm an in or out gal, right? I got to be great at whatever I'm doing. And because I married a saint, and because I have wonderful children, I was able to, and because I'm strong physically, I was able to cheat time for the first 20 years of my career, where I would devote myself to all the things my family did, and then I'd come in. I'd go to work, and then I'd be home when they were at school, and then I'd come in later at night and do the work while they were sleeping, and then start it all over again. And then a day came where it became obvious to me that my children needed me more than that time I could find, and so I left with 2 weeks' notice in the summer of '99, right after InQtel had been formed. Um, and I left for 8 years. I
Mhm.
resigned, gave 2 weeks' notice, and it was both the easiest decision I made, and then I was terrified because, like, "Oh my god, I I'm no longer gonna be a cool kid." Sorry, mom, when I say this, I'm gonna be just a housewife. And then I found out that I learned a whole bunch of stuff. My children grew up, they're successfully deployed on their own lives. I have a basketball team worth of grandbabies. My children have found love and great careers. Um, and I came back 8 years later and had the best second act. So I think what's interesting is that moment I was sure I was leaving it, and it was all gone, right? And what I found was you learn a lot by not doing things, and that life is long, and if you just keep trying, it tends to work out for you. So I think that might have been the thing you expected me to say I would do differently. I would not. I would do it over and over and over again. And I just encourage people to do it. Make choices for your own life, and then when situations change, make a new decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I mean, Sue, there's so much more I could talk about with just so you know, in every single response you give, I have like at least four questions that I have the urge to ask,
But
and
let's
then
do it
realize
again.
there's so much more to say, so much more to talk about, whether it's on the intelligence community and where our country is, or just life stuff. I mean, I am so appreciative of this conversation. So I'm going to wrap us up, but I guess one other question I have for you right now, and um, just a few days ago, William Webster, 101, first and only person to lead both the CIA and the FBI, he passed away. And it made me think about what he saw over all of those years and the kinds of operations that he oversaw. And right now, we're talking on a Substack Live through our cell phones. We're living in this like time of like moving fast, social media, influencers, and then of course the phrase ubiquitous technical surveillance. And as I think about so many of the years that you served, I'm wondering for you, what has been the greatest era for U.S. intelligence? And feel free to go back to a time before you
Yes. Oh,
yourself operated. I mean, we started out talking about Virginia Hall,
yeah.
but
Yeah, so, gosh, such good questions. And William Webster, what a beacon. Linda, we're all with you. Just amazing man. He actually came to NGA right after President Trump had been elected the first time, and there was all the brouhaha around that, as there always tends to be. And I think Webster worked directly for maybe 5 presidents or something, maybe even 7. Anyway, someone said, "Man, how are you gonna deal with this moment?" Or, "How did you deal with the moment?" Or, "How did you deal with the new president?" He said, "My experience is that everyone who takes that office becomes better."
mm,
So I would say that President Trump be better. I came into the CIA in 1980. My first line supervisors were the Wizards of Langley. And to me, and the Wizards of Langley are the people that imagined moving from the world, adding to the world of human intelligence because we were having hard time getting to closed societies and building the capabilities that we built really for the next decade, that were stunning in their complexity and their vision and what they were able to do, and basically are the capabilities that we continue to use for the things that we don't know. But 2 things were apparent. Number 1, they were such great leaders because they had been involved in the lift, and so when they led the expectation of continued lift and continued accomplishment, and they had such skill that they invested that skill in me. I mean, I was, a 21-year-old Zoe major that was trying to learn satellite communications, but the people who were the leaders were the people that had basically formed it. And so I think that era where we were building on the human foundation, but we adding the technical capabilities is probably my favorite. And then the reason why I have PTSD again after losing the career that I loved in 2019 is this is another one of those. Oh my God, I would give anything to lead this moment in national security. We can jettison some of 1947. We can reimagine a world where we don't have to hunt for information. We need to gather it, where there's so much available. The technology is coming to do it. So my favorite was what I entered to because of all those reasons. My jealousy is the people that get the chance to lead now, because this is that moment that the Wizards of Langley had, with a world that is so much more resplendent technologically and full of possibilities. Man, I would love leading this moment.
yeah, yeah, this is a pivotal moment. I mean, just the
It
other
is.
I was picking up this toy moose and this scarf from the Montreal Olympic Games inside the International Spy Museum's vault. And it'll come out in like a week or so. But these were some objects, some pocket litter that some of the U.S. diplomats who were trying to escape Tehran after the U.S. embassy had been overtaken. They were escaping, the Argos story. And I'm holding these objects and thinking about what a different moment that was than where we are today. And what kinds of opportunities there are today that there wouldn't have been back then. It kind of seems like it was more fun back then, if I'm being honest. Like, it just seems like there was more there was a different kind of imagination, but I mean, I don't know, I'm not on the inside, so I
And I think there was the expectation of accomplishment rather than, yeah, it's more bureaucratic now, more policy to keep bad things from happening than policies that are allowing good things to happen, right? And we need to flip that around again. But I will say, when I was PDD&I and when I was deputy director of NGA, even though those are more modern, there were things that being done all the time. I just and for leaders, I think that's the reason I started my story with the good fortune I had of the leaders that I learned to is one of the best thing a leader can do is to create quest and space, right? We need to go here. That's what government's good at, right? Government is good at big problems and long horizons, and they're shorter now, but long horizons and deep pockets. And then what a great leader can do is to take that moment and to give the responsibility to someone other and say, hey, we need to go there. And what happens then, almost no matter where you are, is really quite remarkable. And I think we have one of those moments now. Do we have the leaders that can have the vision to see it and the humility to give it away?
Hmm. Hmm. Sue, there's so much we've talked about here, and I want to end by asking you, what did I not ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, well, I've done the same thing you did. Well, number one, next time we do it, I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions because I think how you've gotten to this is really interesting and why you do it so well, and how do you think through it, and how do you tell? So, I mean, there's just a lot of things I want to answer. So, you have given me the gift of remembering some really amazing people and moments, and in that, despite what can be a really daunting time where it's so easy to get angry rather than to be hopeful, you've actually given me there were some bad days there too. So, we can find our way. You just give me a gift. So, if we talk, there'll be more because 'cause I'm old and rangy, but next time you have to let me ask more questions of you because 'cause I'm pretty confident that if the people listen to you knew your story, uh, they will be even more inspired to, tune into your wisdom.
Well, I'll never forget when I first met you. You were just, as I told you before, larger than life with your energy and your kindness, your warmth, and you grilled me during that video shoot, and I'll never forget it. I mean, I don't think I ever met somebody who asked me more questions, but they were kind questions, and it was special. And I'm just so glad that we're getting this morning to talk. It was worth taking this time, getting up really
You know,
early, doing this. I'm so
well, you
glad.
look better than I do, so it's kind of unfair that I picked the time and and you
Well,
and you look like you've been up for hours.
to be clear, when you had hair, you looked better than me. I mean, come on, let's
Liar,
be honest.
liar. That
But
day will come.
I'll look forward to it. We can go get our hair done together.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being a voice. Thanks for being a voice of understanding, not judgment. I think that we need more of you. Keep it up.
well, I want to let everybody know to check out Sue's podcast, Understandable Insights, Information to Intelligence with Sue Gordon. This woman has a whole lot to say, as we all know from this conversation. So, absolutely check it out. And thank you to everybody who has been here with us.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for coming to Hument. Take care, everybody.